So can you guys see the screen which I put out there right now?
Yeah.
Welcome to the CG Connect. So I'll be running through this really quickly for about a minute and a half, and then after that we directly go into the call. It's 8:01 p.m. In India. So as I told Radha, we are normally wait for a few minutes because some people have technical issues joining. So we'll give them time until 8:05. We have 5 minutes of grace time. And then one of the CG students is actually recording this call as well, complete call. What we do is that once the call is over, the recording of the call will be uploaded into YouTube in our own CG Connect channel, and that YouTube video will be available in the cgconnect.com portal for future viewing by people who could not attend. So we already have the last session already uploaded, so you should be able to see in the CG Connect portal the last week's session from Kumaresh, last session from Kumaresh. And this session, Radha, also will be recorded and put it up in the portal. Uh, I presume all of you registered in the portal because you would not have gotten the Google Meet unless you registered in the portal. We want to promote the portal to be a single point of contact for people to join CEG. We don't have anything official from our college, unfortunately. We do have some semblance of a digital presence from our alumni association, but that is also not widely used. So my attempt is that in addition to the Facebook group that we have called SIGAM, this would be a little bit more multi-purpose social media type site where people can engage with each other. Ultimate aim is to create a portal where all kinds of bilateral relations can happen: mentor, mentee, student, faculty, between alumni, between investor, investee, entrepreneur, mentor. My hope is that once this is fully built out and in scale, all those kind of interactions can be enabled within this self-contained portal without having to log in anywhere else. That's the idea. We're just scratching the surface right now, but hopefully over time we'll get where we need to get to. So the portal, by the way, is built by one of our current students of CEG. He's in the final year of computer science engineering in IT rather than CEG. The guy built this portal in less than 5 days. Unbelievable. The entire thing was built in 5 days, sitting at his home in somewhere far south of Tamil Nadu. So I think it's
Well,
8:04. I'm going to give you one more minute. At 8:05, I will start sharp, go through the presentation real quick, and then we'll dive into the session. So 60 more seconds, please.
okay. Be nice to know where people are from. I know I know where Shanta's from. I know where Sri Rajan's from. I know where you're from. This. Some of the
Uh,
others. Yeah.
yeah, I think they should be putting their information. Let me see if I can get to that really quick. Nikhil is from Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. Somebody is from California, United States. Others haven't typed. By the people who are already in the call, please get on to slido.com. The screen you're seeing in front of you right now, you see this code 484509. If you could go and type slido.com in your web browser interface, and when you open the screen, just type this 484509 in the box where it asks for the participant code. You'll be directly sent to Slido screen, and you can answer the question. One of the first questions I posted, which is please state the city, state, and country where you're joining from. Okay. So 8:05, let's start the call. Radha, thank you for joining. I hope all of you can hear me well. What we're going to do now is to run through a quick presentation of what is the session about, and also specifically on how to use Slido. So without further ado, I am going to the next slide. So guidelines during the call: please stay muted during the fireside chat sessions. Please turn off your video unless you really insist. You don't need the video. The entire session is recorded, as I mentioned, and the recording will be available in the cgconnect.com portal tomorrow. If you have any questions during the program, please use a Slido to ask your questions. I'll show the introduction to Slido in the next few slides. There will be periodic live polls that I'll be posting in Slido while the call is going on. Please participate in this poll. The questions in the poll are meant for us to get real-time feedback from you so we can appropriately manage the call. And during Q&A, if your name is called by me, please unmute to ask your question. Okay. Today's session, Ms. Radha Basu, her LinkedIn profile you must have seen already, is a chief guest from California. Thanks, Radha, for joining on a early morning on a Sunday from California. I'll be the host. Nitya, my co-host, is not available today. She's not well, so she's not going to be able to join today. Slido, here is the Slido screen which has the code. The code which you see here is not the right code, unfortunately. So I had to tell Shirley what the right code is. The right code for Slido for this week's call is 484, as you can see the screen here, 484509. 484509. That is the code for today's call. So that is the number you put in Slido. When you type into Slido, if you open slido.com, you'll see the screen which you're seeing right now. Right here, joining as a participant, there's a blue box with a white space here. Enter code here. That is where you enter the code I just told you. Okay. And once you click enter after putting the code, so here I put 484509, for example, then I get to the screen. You will be seeing the questions that I'm posting on the screen immediately. You'll see two tabs, Q&A tab and a poll tab. Well, in the Q&A tab, you can type your question, whatever you want to ask. In the poll tab are questions that I have posted for you to respond to. Could be multiple choice, could be free text. I decide the kind of things I put in the poll, and you guys can respond. I would really encourage all of you to respond to both the poll questions and also ask questions in the Q&A box, which will be answered by Radha after the initial session is over. Okay? If everybody is okay with that, then we shall move on to the
People are asking if they haven't registered, if they missed the registration window, can they still join? So there's that.
people. Hold on one second. Let me just get rid of this thing. One second. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, people who are not registered won't be able to get the session because the Google Meet links are actually provided as part of the confirmation email when you register. If somebody has not registered, they won't know. We actually kept it open for the last 2 weeks, but then we wanted people to really join the portal and register themselves because we need to have a continuous engagement with our alumni. So we decided that you get access to the Google Meet link only when you register in the portal and join the portal and register for the session as well. And there are some people who have called me and said they don't want to register for whatever reason. I have taken exception to that also. But my request would be that people to join the portal with as much possible. We are going to limit the number of questions we're going to ask in the portal to minimize the amount of information we are collecting. Right now, the only information we are collecting that is personalized in nature is your name and your mobile number and your email. Those three things we need. I don't think we're going to get rid of that. But other questions you might not have. But bottom line, everybody has to join the portal and register for the event. Okay. So without further, I'm going to invite Ms. Radha Basu from California. Thanks, Radha, for joining. Radha Basu is the CEO of iMerit Technology Services based in California and in India. She's a 1971 batch CG from electrical electronics and communication. Is that right, Radha?
Yeah, it's
Electrical.
ECE, electronics and communications engineering, I think, right, Shanta? That's what it was called.
Yep, yeah, it is.
ECE.
Yeah.
The first batch, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Electronics and communications engineering. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome, Radha. Now, what I want to ask Radha is that the first question I'll ask you, the only question I'm going to ask you today is, by the time you left CEG in 1971 till now, you obviously gone through a very amazing and exciting journey. I'm sure there are a lot of learnings that you may want to share. So, for the next 10 minutes, if you could kindly share with us your learnings, significant things that you think would be useful to the audience. The audience today is comprised of students, alumni from all over the world, people in various stages of their career, etc. All that. So, you can address them in whichever fashion that you feel comfortable, so that they can gain from your experience. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vish. First of all, it is this year is amazingly 50 years since we graduated from Gindi, and I'm so happy to have on this call my classmate Shanta, and we've been there's a Gindi group that says 71 group, that's been looking at what can we do to contribute to this college, and have put together a very nice program. I think Shanta and I can say a little bit about it later, terms of upgrading some of the applications, IT applications for the university. But we are delighted. Though 50 years is a very long time to be away from college, but looking back on it, I think for me, I'll say a few things. This is not rehearsed. This is just coming from my heart and from it, whatever has stayed in my mind as really critical things that have come out of being at Gindi. So I think many of you know that I come from a very traditional Tamilian family, very traditional. And I went to a school that was all girls, Good Shepherd Convent. And I jokingly say that have many knuckles that might still hurt a bit coming out of the school, because I wasn't exactly the most pliable student in the school. But a lot of the lessons from those nuns has stuck with me well. And then coming into the environment at Gindi, where the entire place had, I think it was to be, if I remember my numbers, 2,780 boys, and I don't say men, boys, and 17 girls. And so it was quite an environment change. I have to say that the first year, maybe even 2 years, and Shanta will laugh at some of this, were incredibly different. I won't call it hard. I don't think of anything that happened at Gindi to be hard. It was just a very different environment. We were adjusting to being there. This small group of girls were stuck together. We had this little ladies' room, and then this college full of young men who were like, who are these people? But out of that came, for me, what shaped my thinking, my relationships with young men. And because before that, I was in a very sheltered environment. I hardly knew. I come from a family of 3 girls, 2 older sisters, and myself. And I bring this up because till today, some of my best friends are from Gindi. They mostly happen to be boys. Of course, they're all older men now, still behaving like boys. If you see some of the PJs in our WhatsApp group, we have not been away from Gindi for 50 years. I can tell you that. The PJs are absolutely part of our relationships. But what came out of being at Gindi was the long standing depth of relationships, and it kind of guided my confidence, my openness, and the ability to be really deeply friends, and more than friends, with young men, with older men now, with very old people now. And I think that is an important part of a young girl's journey, to learn how to navigate things and to take every day as something different. And also, what came out of Gindi were ups and downs, and anything we did, if you remember, Shanta, would be splashed on every wall in the college. Even things we didn't remember we did. I mean, I would suddenly say, "Oh, did I really go to that movie?" But the entire college would know that I went to that movie,
yeah.
because there might have been one young man in the audience who came to that movie. And then I remember there were times like, I really did go to that movie, didn't I? I really did go to that place. So this thing of being like an open book and you never knew anything you did, the little toe you stepped out. I remember once being at, you all know, the beautiful Marina Beach, very different with all the statues right now, but beautiful Marina Beach. We also were, that was the time that Anna Durai passed away. And remember, Shanta, we went on the march.
Yeah.
And there were so many like comments about us. Really, the girls came on the march. Really, the girls came on the march. We were like, well, we're also part of the state. And but it was this thing about being open book. And I know it sounds strange to you, but that open book really defines how you conduct yourself through especially corporate stuff. And especially there are many times, I'll talk about this in a minute, but we took a company public of which I was a CEO. And there were times I would say to myself, okay, Radha Basu, remember how to be really open book. Think about your days in Gindi, and anything you did, anybody knew about. You had no idea how it would manifest itself. But these are things you learn. So going back to the friendships, I think the enduring nature of those friendships, very rarely does a girl, and I keep saying girl because that's what we were, girls and boys in college, go through life thinking the group of friends she's part of. Now we have a Gindi women's group, and it is the best group there is. Young ladies of all ages. Shanta and I think, are the oldest in the group, and then a series of young ladies. But my class group is when we even traveled together. We've been to some exciting parts of the world together. It's so enduring. I can be myself at any point. And we have this funny statement that there are the guys and their spouses, Spice they're called, and there's myself and my husband Deepak, and he's called Spouse. So there's the spouse and the Spice and all of us. And there are about 17, 18 of us, and we've traveled to all kinds of places together. But it's not just the travel and the friendship, it's the enduring nature of supporting each other, which helped a lot through some of the worst days of our lives. So from Gindi, once you've been in Gindi, you've gone from an all-girls school to an essentially all-boys college. You're like, what new can there be? So I came to the U.S. I'm now in California. I came to the U.S. without knowing a single soul, not one soul. And, in those days, many of you who've come at those times know that we got this wonderful RBI clearance for $8. And so it was $8, me and nobody else I knew, except I had admission in the university, and I knew I had a teaching assistantship a research assistantship. I landed up and had some really strange experiences, not knowing where I was going. I remember being thrown off the bus 3 times because I didn't know what the person was saying. He was asking me for a dime. I had no idea what dimes and nickels were. And at the end of it, I found out that I can actually go free from where I was to the university by just being thrown off the bus maybe 2 or 3 times. So I went through several days riding free to the university. And so you get all these different experiences. The other thing was being vegetarian was quite an experience. I'm sharing these not to really show how these things can shape your thinking and your life. Sort of this, you're down? Okay, get up, think of something really innovative way and move on. I had $8. I wanted to conserve a lot of it. And I realized that my first paycheck would come at best 30 days later because I had to get Social Security, blah, 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 all that stuff. So how do you make $8 last for a month? Well, one way of doing it is to go to every department induction or program or when it was the beginning of the school year, when every department opened up, they had this all hands party or invitation to all the students in that department and teachers. I would go there. I would stand out very much because there were no other Indian ladies on campus. And I would wear my puttu, and everybody would say, "What is that? Is that a third eye?" etc., etc. And I'd get to talk a little bit about India. I would get free food, and more than anything else, they would also give me a quote, a doggy bag, which I understood later was one of my most precious possessions, was a doggy bag. And so this went on for a month, and I have to tell you, I put on weight in that 1 month because I had food from so many different sources. And I think I spent all of $1 of the $8 in that month. So you kind of figure out ways of coping with things and actually having a lot of fun doing it. I got to know a lot of people on campus, and that shaped my life on campus. Got my master's and had a great opportunity to get a master's in EE with a biomedical minor, and then had a really great opportunity to join HP Labs in medical technologies and ultrasound imaging. And that then took me from HP Labs to Boston, worked at HP for 20 years. I say I grew up at Hewlett Packard at a time when David Packard was still roaming the halls. And those of you, many of you are much younger. It was called management by wandering around. And till today, I have to tell you, the lessons I learned and the management styles I learned at Hewlett Packard absolutely are part and parcel of every fabric and fiber in me. To see somebody of the caliber of David Packard, and you can run into him into halls. Had a very funny experience once. I was maybe 2 or 3 people behind him at the lunch, checkout counter. And David never carried cash. Oh my gosh, he would search in his pockets all the time. This big 6'4" man would be searching in his pockets. And so he was up there, and of course he couldn't find cash. So he tells the lady there, he says, and I even remember her name, Daniela. He says, "I'm David Packard." He never used to do that, but that day I think he was really embarrassed. He said, "I'm David Packard. I will definitely bring the money to you." And she looked at him real cool, and she said, "Oh yes, and I'm the Queen of England." And she would not let him get through without paying. There were three of us who saved him at that point. And the way he rewarded her is he gave her HP stock shares, because he said this kind of service to the company and to being truthful to what you have to do was something he really appreciated. And she wrote later, in fact, there was a blog, she passed away, but she wrote how much that helped her and her family, those shares of stock that David Packard gave her. But in the middle at HP, I had the best experience, I think, of my life until this point of being at iMerit, and that was to start Hewlett Packard in India. And you have to understand, it was at a time, and wish I'd probably be more than 10 minutes, but I'll get there the next 5 minutes. But it was at a time when, believe it, guys, believe it, team on here, guys and girls, there was no IT in India. It was 1980s, mid-1980s, and nobody thought you could do IT, leave alone any kind of technology work in India. And I had the opportunity to start HP in India. Strange story how I got there. A lot of things happen to me when I'm waiting on planes or on planes. I had been at HP in Germany for about 2 years, and I was headed back, repatriating back to the US. And I had asked to be in sales because I was in R&D and I wanted customer experience, and I got that in Germany. And headed back, I got into a rip-roaring fight with my head of international. Caution to all of you, don't get trapped on a flight with your boss 3 levels higher, 4 levels higher, and have no place to go. You might end up in a very strange job. And he said, "Oh, that country of yours, nothing is happening. it's behind the ages. And I said, I challenge you. We have the best math talent in the country. And he says, okay, I'll give you 3 months. Go prove it. 3 months paid. So I went to India and I got this great opportunity to start Hewlett Packard in India and set up the first software center of any multinational, along with Charlie Simon of Texas Instruments. And we both started in Bangalore. And those of you who have been in Bangalore or from there, there is a small room, which is now some kind of a heritage room, where we set up the first satellite data link. Well, what was the link? We would string stuff between HP and Texas Instruments, strong wires. We dug the ground, those were the times when you applied for a phone line. They would give it to you landline. There was no concept of cell phones. They would give it to you like 4 months later. And even if you expedited it, it would take like 2 or 3 months. So we actually dug stuff and put it in. But that, for me, was the most entrepreneurial experience I've ever had. And I think it set me up for life to be an entrepreneur, because we started with 18 people and was all about setting up the software center. It was the first 100% owned. Remember, it used to be only 40% then, 100% owned multinational organization. And it was also the time when some stalwarts in the industry started. Kohli of TCS, with Ramadurai, Mahalingam, Naren Murthy of Infosys, and KK, different people, Azim Premji, and many different people. I can name a whole bunch. Arjun Malhotra, HCL, a lot of people started at that time. And it was, Shaw of DEC. And we were like a family. And I remember celebrating the first $1 million of IT export, or just we called it export, from India. First $1 million. It's now a $300 billion industry. So you learn how to make do with very little. And I think over the years, when I left India 5 years later, it was considered, the CEO of HP at that time, that was Lou Platt, said it was a jewel in HP's crown. And we did multi-threaded Unix, if you can believe it, multi-threaded Unix from that center. So it really developed. When I left, there were 1,200 people. I think there's like 200,000 people now. Of course, HP is split and everything. And that also led me to become head of international software for HP, where I had 8 software centers worldwide, including the one in India. I had India, Singapore, Japan, Germany, 2 in the US, Brazil, and I think France. I forget what the 8th one was. So it gave me some great international experience, and we built the first enterprise solutions organization, which was using these software centers to build customer solutions globally, and grew that into a $1.2 billion business. And it was my first experience of growing a $1 billion business, and it was an amazing experience. Also learning to work with different cultures. And then decided, and this was the hardest decision, my husband and I had, we were going to, we decided to go for a crazy trek to Everest Base Camp. It was a 23-day trek. And you have to know, girl from Tamil Nadu, who feels cold in San Francisco, going on a 23-day trek to Everest Base Camp was quite an amazing experience, and very hard. At times I would be on the trek thinking, why in the world am I doing this? But it was, when you're alone with the mountains, it gives you such a sense of how small, what a dot you are in all of nature, and how you fit into the universe as a whole. It gives you a lot of time to think about it, gives you a lot of time to think of adversity, dust yourself up, move on. lots of things like that. And being alone with yourself, even though I was traveling in a group and with my husband, in nature, you are really that microcosm that's alone in the world, in the universe. And the magnitude of nature and how close you are when you're in nature to the whole universe and to every core belief that you have. Came back and decided to leave HB and wasn't sure exactly. I knew I had to look for some place to go to leave HB. I loved the company so much. I had just become VP that I would never leave. So I decided the only way to leave was to just leave. And I remember telling my CEO, and he said, "Oh, you know, the oxygen is very low when you're up at base camp. Base camp is at 18,000 feet." And he said, "Oh, your mind must be addled." I'll never forget those words. Your mind must be addled, your brain. So come back in a month. I went back in a month and said, "I have an addled brain that's telling me I have to leave." And this went on. I left HB. And then with three other people, young people, all under 30, started a software company. And we took it in self-healing software. We had 8 patents, and then took it public on NASDAQ in year 2000. And you won't believe it, I believe a lot in Carpe Diem. Took it public 2 weeks before. Remember, that was the year of the dot-com boom and bust, or those years. 2 weeks before the market shut down to companies going public. We were the second last company to go public with something called ratable revenue recognition. It was the genesis of SaaS, and where you recognize revenues over a long period of time. 36 months is what we did. It wasn't enterprise license software. It was ratable revenue recognition. You hosted it. Well, there wasn't hosting then, but you licensed it over time. And that was called the triple R, ratable revenue recognition, and was actually the sort of the forefront of SaaS, the SaaS model. We took the company public, did really well, even got to do a secondary 2 years later. I have some very funny and interesting stories about that, and how you take the company public, you're euphoric about it, and then 2 weeks later, the market crashes. And you don't crash as much as the market, but then everything goes into standstill for a period of 18 months. And how to weather your company, and what I call frugal, being able to do frugal financial management, not to be cheap, not to not invest because we had raised a good amount of money, but to manage it frugally. And that's when I learned about quarter after quarter of good gross margins, of being able to do cash and earnings positive, definitely cash, and the value of cash management. That company, along with my CFO, who was Canadian, Brian Beattie, was one of the best run companies. We weathered it through, did a secondary, and it was such an experience in being able to do very clear operational management in very adverse times. There were some statistics that some of you who may have been around then would remember. Close to 92% of the companies that were either startups or went public in that short period of time when the dot-com boom happened, either went out of business or really suffered through the times. And we actually learned the painful experience of managing month by month, quarter by quarter, and almost week by week. I learned a lesson then to look at revenues and costs and what the outlook was on a weekly basis. We set up something called a sales delivery call, which, believe it or not, today at iMerit, we use on a weekly basis. So that stern and very careful management of cash and financial and client Some of the experience there, the client focus, client retention, client health, and real respect and retention of your people were some of the things. Of course, I started with a software operation in India. I had a lot of experience there. These really kept the company going. And then we sold the company, and the enterprise side, the .com side, continued. It's still there somewhere, I think, as support.com. I'm not in touch. I brought in a new CEO. And my husband at that time, who had at Cisco, we had decided that we would get into more nonprofit, what we call the redeeming side of things. And he had started a wonderful nonprofit called Anudeep, which still is in existence. And so I decided to join him after we sold the enterprise side of the business. And I brought in a new CEO and worked with the new CEO to hand over a period of about 6 months, introducing him to all clients. There's another thing I learned, the importance of transitions, learned from HP. HP had the best transitions in the early years, from David Packard to John Young to Dean Morton to Lou Platt, until things changed when Lou Platt handed over to Carly Fiorina. Then things changed at HP. So then I joined my husband, Anudeep, which is the parent of iMerit, and I'll go into that and end with it. Anudeep is a nonprofit which is in existence. It's going into its 14th year, and it was set up to train young people of very low income, started in the Sundarbans in the eastern side of India, and one of the poorest regions in the country, to train young people in English, workplace readiness, and basics of computers and IT, and then train them to interview and then work with employers to see how they could interview and see if they could go into jobs. Anudeep, to this day, has now trained almost 120,000 young men and women, and now are national and work with over 200 plus employers, and even going international now. And they're in Bangladesh and done some work in Africa. And it is one of the most enduring nonprofit organizations in skills training and job creation in India. And Deepak also went through bringing in a new CEO about 3 years ago. And again, a transition. He continues to be chairman, a transition that's worked very well. About 8 years ago, I saw that these young people were going into basically BPO jobs, call centers, data entry, etc. So decided to but I saw a lot of potential, decided to take a small subset. I'm always, I told you earlier, a little bit entrepreneurial, doing things, want to do things out of the box, take risks. I'm a risk taker. And said, okay, I'll take a small group and see how we can leapfrog BPO and go into something that's digital, online. You have to understand at that time, 8 years ago, digital was there, but it wasn't big. And took a group of 38 young men and women, and soon became about 70, and decided to set up something called a Merit Center. You'll laugh when I tell you what Merit stands for. Mass Employment Through Rural IT, and set up the Merit Center, which then we spun off into a company, but a for-profit social enterprise. Again, people are like, what's that? For-profit, non-profit? One, you get donations, the other, you make profits. But a for-profit social enterprise that created jobs and workforce was very inclusive, young men and women from low-income backgrounds. And we started with doing online digital work, some struggled through the first 2 years to take people, train them, get global jobs. eBay gave us some work. Stanford University did, all personal contacts, and had an amazing encounter with Piero Mediar of Mediar Network, founder of eBay. And he decided to put seed money along with me into iMerit, which was then the creation of iMerit, innovative merit, the I of Apple, the I of innovation, the I of just being inimitable, lots of I's. And we started iMerit about 8 years ago with peers and the Omidyar network coming in with seed money. And if you fast forward, we got into AI, also talk about carpe diem, opportunities, seizing opportunities. We had a young man in Microsoft who wanted to take a sabbatical and was interested in sort of the model we were doing, came to India and trained us on their Connect platform, and something that has now become a crazy field called computer vision. So being able to do, look at, we had a big skeleton and we did key point annotation. He taught us how to do that on online platforms. And we found that young women, especially from rural and minority backgrounds, were excellent. You could teach them Photoshop better than any of us could learn it. And we found a niche of doing computer vision work. And believe it or not, that is what got us into AI, computer vision, and into the whole field of label ops, map ops, training algorithms, etc. Key point annotation, 3D LiDAR. So you fast forward, iMerit is today a well-funded company. Our investors are Omidyar Network, Dell Foundation Ventures, Khosla Ventures, and a year and a half ago, CDC out of the UK, $8 billion growth equity fund that actually does invest also in creating jobs. The company is now 5,200 employees. We created 1,200 jobs during COVID year, all in AI. 5,200 employees, earnings and cash flow positive. Remember those lessons a long time ago in SupportSoft. Earnings and cash flow positive for the last 12 quarters, with the exception of one quarter last year during lockdown, April to June. And we are at the forefront of training technologies in autonomous vehicles, autonomous mobility. We do some of the best 3D LiDAR work, being able to do multi-sensor fusion of LiDAR, radar, 2D cameras, drone imagery, natural language processing. And we have this absolute belief in 2 feet planted firmly on the ground. 1 foot and one view is towards a maniacal focus on clients, something I learned at HB. And that means your client health, your client growth is the most critical, and that drives the business. And you do it with an inclusive workforce. And let me describe our workforce. 52% women, 78% young people from low income, minority, rural, tribal, could be visually or be more impaired, variety of different things, variety of different backgrounds, and 78%. And the average age of the company, and I'll end with this because you will fall off your chairs when you hear this, is 24.1. And this very sassy, born digital, born mobile group of young employees will tell me in a very sassy way. Last year, I turned 70, and we did a I Dream social wall all through the company. It's also the time when we raised our B round. It was a very successful B round of financing. And in the I Dream session and on my 70th year, they sent me messages, very sassy messages that said, our average age is 24.1, but Dee, if it were not for you, it would be 23 and a half. And so that's the kind of spirit and can-do attitude of the company. And I will end by saying that while we're global, we have some of the largest autonomous vehicle clients. In fact, I would say very proudly, 3 of the top 5, and in the autonomous mobility, 6 or 7 of the top 10, including drone delivery, variety of different things, AI in medicine, AI in precision agriculture, AI in fintech. We have, my inspiration comes from these young people with their can-do attitude. When I traveled to the centers, and I just came back from India, I went there in March of this year and saw the horrible, horrible issues that the country faced in April, and came back through no oxygen, no hospital beds, etc. And how sustainable and how resilient our people were. We had to do all work from home, including a very, very high bandwidth 3D LiDAR. We set up bandwidth to communities that didn't have internet before. And we had 1 gigahertz lines into the centers that had to be replicated into communities. And the resilience with which we've grown in the last year and come back, that's my inspiration. I would end by saying, I'm the happiest and most inspired when I'm with these young people. And that has made all the difference to the lives, my husband and my lives, as we have gone through the most difficult time as parents when we lost our young daughter to cancer in 2008, our only child. And her words that there are a lot of young people to be helped everywhere has resounded in our heads and hearts every day. And today it's reversed. It's these young people that help us and inspire us. With this, I will stop. Thank you.
That was amazing. That is amazing and stunning story. I have to say that I had to turn many pages of notes to write what you said. Actually, so many things to learn. There were so many things to learn from that. There's so many things to take away from that. Anyway, we have a few audience questions. If you are okay, I can ask them.
Of course.
There is one gentleman who asked a question. Asking about HP, why HP chose to go to Bangalore and not to Chennai? Would that not be a better answer, etc. All that. So, whoever asked the question, can you please unmute yourself and ask the question yourself, please?
Yes, this is Andy Giri. I live in Chennai, actually. Of course, we are all CE agents. I was curious to know because I know Somasagar was in my class and he chose Hyderabad for Microsoft. So at that period, I know Bangalore was very prominent. Still, Bangalore is a market leader or leader in software services or product and resources possibly. But so if at this point of time you were to set up, how would Chennai compete? Of course, climate cannot be changed. Apart from that, what parameters you think would make a difference?
You have to understand, Andy, that in 1986, 87, when we set up, Bangalore had 3 things. And I have to say that it kind of stood out for three reasons. One is Indian Institute of Science and the kind of help we got from just having people, Sena Rao was, and some of the people were, young and working younger, I guess, and had a vision, and you could get students out of there. Because remember, we set up with a very small group of people, 18 people, young people coming out of, even then, Bharat Electronics. Definitely the climate made a difference. Bangalore was a very sleepy garden city. And the other thing that came out was they had and I wish I could remember his name right now. This is what happens as you age. a young, like a government, there was no IT department, but like a government secretary type of person. And the one thing I remember about him is he would just say to anything you ask, you want to set up a satellite data link. He would first say, yes, 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 we can do that. And I would say, but do you know what a satellite data link is? Yeah, I will find out. I will find out. And I think it was this attitude of which even today I think of, that can do attitude. And believe it or not, we would do things together that nobody had ever done before, right? I'll give you one funny little story. We had to do software export. So the software was going over the satellite data link, but you try to tell customs, this thing is going over a data link. They would say, where are the goods? Where are the goods? We went 3 times to get the software export registered because we were legally bound to do that. And we came away, Charlie and I came away with 0 because the customs said, where are the goods? This young secretary person came up with the idea. He said, look, just dump all the software or whatever you have in the computer room, put it on these mag tapes and take them to customs and mark them 1.001, 1A. We used to put all kinds of codes, 1A, B, C, D, 2, etc. And every month, Charlie and I would take, this one is like, you go to the temple and you put flowers there. We would take this to the customs officer and he would say, good, good, good. You have figured out how to do software export. And we would get that. And these mag tapes would go to the US and sit there in one warehouse because you have to keep it for 5 years. And when I left HP, they roasted me and they called it Radha's Junk Warehouse. And it was a sign that was on this warehouse, Radha's Junk. So why I'm bringing this up is he was a man who thought through these things and worked with us. And I think that can-do spirit kept us in Bangalore. And as you know, today, if I were doing this, you see, I actually would not do it in Bangalore, Chennai, or Hyderabad, or Gurgaon, or Pune. I think the talent that's there is in Vizag, Bhubaneswar, Coimbatore, many parts. We just set up a center in Hubli. iMerit just did an AI center in Hubli with Desh Deshpande, really one of the best known technology CEOs, entrepreneurs in the US, with Desh Deshpande in Hubli. That is where the talent is, and people are so eager to work, and young people, that's what I would do. So, hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. The rest of your story was very, very inspirational, much beyond HP.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a few more questions, Radha. There is, I'm going to go through the list. Alifia is the name. Would you like to ask your question? Unmute yourself and ask the question.
Good morning, ma'am. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, hi, Alifia. And please don't call me ma'am. Please don't call me ma'am, but go ahead.
Your speech was absolutely wonderful. I was just thinking, I'm a sophomore here at CEG. So what advice would you give me? Because I'm looking to make the most of my time here and utilize all my opportunities well.
Oh, wow. First of all, Shanta would know this, but when I was at CEG, I think it was 2 years ago, right, Shanta, when had the real honor of getting a distinguished alumni award, which Shanta is also a distinguished alumnus. But at that time, I looked out and saw the number of women, and it actually made me smile. It's like 50% women now. So opportunity-wise, Alifia, it's all about seizing what comes and looking out of saying, what is my passion? I don't know, what department are you in, Alifia?
Ma'am, I'm in the EEE department, ma'am.
EEE. And so look at what excites you in EEE. EEE is so broad now. if it's medical AI or medical electronics, or if it's AI, or if it's IoT, or if it's something else, and get a nice internship in that. Read up lots of things. I used to, those times it was very hard to listen to lectures. Now everything is available. And I would say go at this stage, go with whatever you're passionate about. I would say more than anything at this stage, it's about passion and getting an opportunity in working in it or reading about it, participating, and be very engaged. Participate in blogs, in courses, in video cast sessions, even attending something like this, asking questions, and just get engaged. One of the things I find with young students is little reticence to take risk. Oh my gosh, I think that's one thing about our generation. Would you agree, Shanta? We took risks. We kind of went places where we knew nothing about. Imagine going to the US without knowing a single soul, right? Now, go ahead, Shanta.
No, you are absolutely right. We were pioneers, Radha.
We never thought of ourselves that way. But
no, we didn't.
But taking risk and doing something new that you feel you can never do is, I think, it could be going to climb the mountain, whatever, when you don't have you train, of course, you get ready and you prepare for it, but you have no idea if you can succeed. And taking that on the edge, being on the edge and taking the risk, I hope I don't get you into trouble saying this, but that worked for me. It worked for Shanta. We kind of did things that others didn't do. So, Shanta, you want to add anything? Because you know us well.
Right. So. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I remember when we were talking about your life for the book, you said one thing that, I don't believe I heard any of the others say, which is taking risks. And I think that is exactly right. And even to know what you're passionate about, you've got to do some exploration. You've got to try many different things and something will click. Am I right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And something will click, and then you'll find that, maybe that didn't work as well. You fall down. Falling down and learning from that is absolutely the best lesson. I always think about this, even with young kids and parents who are very protective. I say, let them fall, because they learn next time what it means to pick yourself up, dust off, and move on. And that is a very, very strong lesson in life. So that's what I would say, Alifia.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay, there's another question, rather along similar lines, from someone who chose to be anonymous. I'm reading this question. I'm a final year girl student in CEG-CSE, I presume it is computer science engineering, and deciding if I should go for higher studies or work. In the current environment, what do you advise?
What is the acronyms you said? I'm sorry, I missed that part.
I'm a final year girl student in CEG-CSE. I presume CSE is computer science engineering, and deciding if I should go for higher studies or work. In the current environment, what do you advise?
It depends on where you want to go for higher studies. I think this last year has been hard for higher studies because so much of it is distance learning. Mm-hmm. And it's also been a hard year for people to get into new jobs, or freshers to get into jobs. Not because the jobs are absolutely available, they are crazy available right now, but also because it's very hard to get into a job for the first time and not be able to see anybody. If I had to do it, and believe me, I do not give this kind of advice to people. I only talk about if I were there doing it, I'd probably go get a year or two of experience and see how, and hopefully that students get back into the college environment and studies and things, and then get into colleges to study, because doing it remotely, I think, is hard. Though I will say this, I think the norm of the future is some blend, or it's a blend between distance learning and in-campus learning. And I think it's true of work. It's going to be a blend of work from home or work from anywhere. That's what we're calling it, WFA. It's a wow. It's a work of the future is working from anywhere. So I think we better get used to it. But if I were, it's very hard to say this, to give advice like this on a one line. The real advice I would give you is get a mentor. Go talk to the mentor. This is something that Shanta and I do a lot of, and go talk to a mentor. Don't take advice from me after a one-liner here. Go talk to the mentor, really deep dive into what you want to do, and you'll come up with a very good answer yourself with the mentor. So that would be my advice.
So, rather, in the context of that question, some people want to know if they can contact you. I don't know if you want to send any of your contact details in this session or send it separately. It's completely up to you. Perhaps you can do an email address or something people can write the questions to for follow-up.
Yeah, I will work with you, Vish. Maybe it's through, you have a WhatsApp or you have a portal. Maybe we do it through the portal, and I'll talk to Shanta as well and see what would be the best way to do it. We have a women's group as well, where there are, sometimes, even though it shouldn't be that way, sometimes women find it easier to be part of a women's group. Shanta, let you, Vish, and I talk about this, and I will definitely provide you with the ability to contact us for sure. We'll find a way.
Yeah. Two more questions popped up recently. So first question is again anonymous. Are you hiring now in India or US? As a junior CEG person, it will be great to work for you and learn.
First of all, why are you anonymous? Oh, come on.
I don't know. I really don't know this.
Why are you anonymous? You want
every question is anonymous today. I don't know why. Almost every question is anonymous today.
Am I scaring you guys?
No, basically, those are because you started the speech with, Radha. Be open, right?
No, maybe the people are not familiar with the way, because the time it's posted, it automatically takes it as anonymous.
Because in the Scalio, there is an option on the right side. Even I didn't know. Later, I figured out why it is showing anonymous, and then I had to change my name and email ID. Then only, but it didn't change the question.
Well, whoever asked that question is on this link, so they can actually say hello to me and ask the question. I'm going to this taking risk and showing yourself up is really important. Yes, we are hiring. I told you in the COVID year, we created about, I think it was almost 1,300 jobs in India and the US. It's in delivery resources, AI delivery. It could be in tech. It could be ML ops work. It's in sales, solution architects. Yeah, we are hiring. We're growing. What I would say to you is intern first. Intern, since you're a junior, get some experience. Some of our best employees are freshers who come out of college, but they have done some work previously. So, hey, show yourself up and go for it.
Excellent. The next question is again anonymous. Thank you. I'll read the question. If somebody wants to read
me. That's me.
Okay.
Okay. Sriraj.
Please ask your question. Go ahead.
Okay. Basically, it was a very excellent, impressive talk, Radha. I mean, it's very nice to hear about the difficult journeys and whatever challenges. My question is, when you started from moving from a large organization like HP and starting up something like iMerit, you said with a very small group of people, and what were the initial challenges and how did you overcome that? I mean, what's a typical, I mean, I've been through different small startup kind of an operations, but it's quite challenging to scale it up. I mean, from a small like 15, 20 people to 1,000 people or 2,000 people organization. It seems to be a very, very challenging task. So anything you could guide us?
Excellent question. Because what happens when you're in a large organization, and remember when I was at HP, the enterprise solutions had become a $1.2 billion organization. I started it at about 80 million, and it became a global $1.2 billion organization. Very hard to leave that. First of all, mentally, I had grown up at HP. I was there 20 years. But the other part is you go from having the umbrella of insurance and support. The company has the stuff, and you're going from there to a startup where everything you do, you create it from scratch. But I'll tell you the lesson that really helped me there was within HP when I started HP India. You guys, don't laugh, okay? In fact, laugh. It's okay. Do you know my first communications out of, quote, HP India? First of all, the first HP India office was in our dining room. And the first communications was on this old machine called a teletype. I don't think you guys even know what that is. But it would be like cut, 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 cut. And the first communications out of Hewlett Packard in India to HP Asia, to Hong Kong, actually, where my boss was at that time. I was then reported into HP in the US, was on this. So teletext, I think it was called, something like that. Telex machine. That's what it was, a telex machine. I see this because it was as much on like startup, like anywhere else. I mean, I felt so isolated. I was myself and one Ambassador Carver, the only two assets in India. And we both had a number to us. I had a number, the Ambassador Carr had a number. But what happens is you take behind you the experiences of I was talking to you earlier, you've been in TCS, you've been in some very good experiences of up and down, IT and jewelry and things like that. You take those experiences of what to do and what not to do. And then you spin it up into this, and you take it a step at a time. And the most important one is the risk taking. Hardest as an entrepreneur in a startup is taking a deep breath and saying, okay, I'm going to risk this. What's the worst that could happen? And you try something you haven't tried before because you believe in it. You think it can really be of asset to your clients. You're very client driven and you go out with it. Once that happens and that clicks, then you go on to the next things. And I think the risk taking, the client focus, what I call maniacal focus on clients actually drive the value you offer. And the more value, I have this kind of mantra, doing more with less can get you more. So we think of it as you do more for the client and you start with getting even less from them, but that always drives you into a long-term, much bigger relationship with the client. So looking at the client problem and solving for that with your technology, the risk taking, and then to some extent, it's kind of your attitude is, I'm part of a team that's going to go for it. We have this thing at iMerit, go for it. And you'll hear this on some really hard situations. We'll say, okay, that's the decision made. Everybody, it's going to be tough. Go for it. And then you go for it with everything you have. So those are the things. And being financially prudent. No, that lesson will never go from me. So,
is it product or is it your sales and marketing, which you think it's like both has to go balanced. I mean, equally. I believe for me, we felt product is the first, because unless you have something to kind of reach to the market. But then sometimes, product is a never ending story. It's like keep on
First of
evolving.
all, you can't market vaporware. So you need to have something
Something
that you.
solid.
Yeah, but let me say this. To me, it's neither product nor sales and marketing, because those two go together. It is solving a client problem. When you are of value to the client, I can't say that enough. Having that ear to the ground, very close to the client, I still do. No, I shouldn't even say still. One of the best things for me in this last year has been doing BRs, ABRs, we call them, or QBRs with the client, business reviews. I participate in every single one of them. It can be 50, it can be 80, whatever it is, I participate in them. And through that 1 hour, 1.5 hours, there is a connection with the client that you can't get in any other way. And you find out things of what you're doing well. We give them an opportunity to tell us what we're doing well, what we're not doing well. And in every case, my question is, how can we improve? And don't tell us we're doing really well. I love hearing it, but tell us, how can we improve? What's your next level of pain that's coming up? So we can address that. So your innovation, even in product, is geared towards solving a client problem. And I'm a real believer in this. I said before, maniacal focus on client, solving client problem, client help, and that brings in business like nothing else, and the revenues come in. And this inclusive workforce, respecting it, growing it, mindfulness. Last year for us, because our workforce is so big and so many of them are in India, and young people from backgrounds that don't have all the medical facilities, the wellness programs we did through COVID of medical insurance for everybody in the family, not just the employees and their parents, grandparents, a ability to call in for a 1 hour counseling with a psychologist, free, 45-minute actually. And how many young people had problems in their homes, even depression and things like that. Those are things you invest in your work, in your employee base, and you respect them, you connect with them. In the last year, I've done over like 500 calls, 500 more than that calls with employee groups, and the focus on client. So that's what I think makes a startup work. And your funders, of course. Don't let me forget them. But they are the impetus. Yeah.
Thanks, Radha. We have a few more questions. I'm going to have Bhupalan, Mr. Bhupalan, like this, ask his question, please. Thanks a lot, ma'am. I had the luxury of attending your session, and by the way, this is my first CConnect series at CEG Connect, and it's my pleasure. I did learn a lot from you. So we have a small consulting firm set up for a year and a half now. So good, quite profitable. Touch wood. Our sustainability is basically the question for us as we gear towards the next phase of our, let's say, growth. So our customers predominantly are in Europe, and in last, as Mr. Srirajan said, scaling up on sustainability are the two key factors that we see. And here I would need probably, let's say, some sort of mentoring exercise from someone, and if it's possible for you, if I could connect with you separately, maybe just sometimes, if because I've not had a let's say a professional management course or a degree, it's all by experience. Have been I started my career at Cognizant, which was like 200,000, and then slowly now I have come to a place where I was freelancing, and then I started my own. So I'd worked for multiple organizations, big companies like SAP. In most of these places, I've done only delivery roles. What I've learned so far is, okay, the cost of earning a new client is obviously much, much more than the cost of retaining the existing clients. Yeah. So this is very clear. But if I were to scale up, I would also need new clients and sustaining with the existing clients. So in these aspects, I would need someone like you to mentor if it would be possible.
Bhupalan, let's take this offline. As I said, we'll work with Vish
Yeah.
and with Shanta to figure this out. Yeah. So I
Okay.
wish you all the best. Yes, for
Thank you.
sure.
Yeah. So the next question is on the Google Meet session. Ravi Shangodan, I presume you're the name right? Ravi Shangodan. Can you ask your question?
Yes. Hello, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Hi, Ravi.
So I run a startup. I've been running it for like about a little more than 8 years, and we're about 70 people now. And this startup, I have been running it by myself. I do not have a co-founder. We are successful. At the same time, one of the challenges that I face is that to find people who can share a large part of the vision and the passion that I have for delivering business. And I find it difficult. Like I try to give my time, I try to nurture talent, but this is an area where I seem to be finding it a little difficult. I thought I'd ask you and see how, if you had problems in this side, and if, how did you manage this part of your professional life?
Are you talking about what is exactly the challenge you have? Can you?
So if I'm building a product or a service, the vision and what needs to be part of the service or a product is something which I do it myself. I think through it myself, and I take from people in my team. But the challenge that I'm facing is finding competent people, finding people who will also be able to see the client's problem that you mentioned a little while ago. So identify that and make that ownership of that problem. So I find trouble in finding such talent or finding such people who will have that. So how do we do that? How do we try, as in, if it is a job and we advertise and we try to recruit new talent, that is what should I say, an organic process, and that is what, as much as I know, what everybody does, and which I also do it. But is there anything that can be done differently, or for you to
So,
build a team, how would you go about doing
so
it?
I believe in two things that rather it's worked for me. Again, each environment is different. So I can only, as I said earlier, just talk about my experiences and what's worked for me. First of all, what works very well for us, whether it's at iMerit or support software, even at HP in building HP India, is it took some very young talent. And, I was much younger then, but even today, took some very young talent and really helped to shape their thinking. They don't come with baggage, and they don't come with predetermined, they don't have to unlearn to learn. So, and a lot of times what you need is unlearning before you learn. And so, for example, here at iMerit, I told you the average age people are so young. So we have the AI world is a very different world from the IT services world. I mean, IT services is $300 billion. So obviously it's a very, very successful world. But the AI world is quite different in terms of the fastness and agility and the online experience. So we've had to, the people who come to us who haven't worked before don't have sometimes it's really funny. They won't even know, they're so young, they don't even know what a BPO is. They say, what's a BPO? And so the development of these people is entirely, the molding is with what they experience in iMerit. And it's amazing how you can actually influence that thinking. And this maniacal focus on client, you will hear from a majority of our employees and they practice it every day. And so they learn to listen to the client, ask the client questions. A lot of times what happens in the software development or the delivery teams is they don't ask clients enough questions. And we provide that opportunity because it's such a new field, autonomous vehicles, autonomous mobility, AI med. You have to ask the client questions. So developing that kind of inquiry, inquisitiveness, really getting that information is a skill that, and self-learning, always looking at new articles and reading and learning. These are not things that develop very well in a lot of the Indian environment. So that's been a big investment for us. And we found that to be to work very well, Ravi, and getting young talent and developing them. Now, there are experts we need, for example, ML automation, machine learning automation experts. Then you go for the specialty, or we have a Stanford trained surgeon who heads up our AI med. He's not practicing, but he's a Stanford trained surgeon who's come into technology and heads up our AI med program, because you need that expertise. Then you hire those people very carefully to fit into your culture. But a lot of our talent is developed as freshers and developing them from within.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful. Thank you very much.
By the way, today's session we have about people from 5 different countries and 9 different cities. So it's quite nice. The last set of questions I have, there are a couple of questions left, Radha, to ask. They all look like similar questions. They're all anonymous. So I'm going to read the question for you. In this day and age, is it possible to start and grow a business without an MBA? How can we be a part of iMerit's non-profit journey?
Hi, that was me. My name is Jayashri. I know in the sense of time, I want to be, so can you please answer the second question, which is how can we be a part of iMerit journey? Not from an employee, not from, finding a career and finding a job there, but more as I have a full-time job, but I would like to contribute something to iMerit. How can I?
So, first of all, I don't have an MBA, and I have been to Stanford's executive management program, but I don't have an MBA. And I don't even think about it, to be honest. Second one, as you know, iMerit and Anudeep. Anudeep is the nonprofit arm, and iMerit is the for-profit social enterprise. So there are different ways to contribute. Being able to provide ideas for the different ways and different areas in which jobs are available to skill young people. We have an English academy where we do communications, comprehension, and confidence building in English, because our employees are working with clients directly. Even being able to help us with, and help Anudeep with providing different technology platforms or ideas where skilling can take place. All of these can happen. So I think that it depends a lot on your interest and where you feel you can contribute. But hey, we are very open to that. But the nonprofit side is Anudeep, and iMerit is, as you know, the social enterprise that creates jobs for young people from very low income backgrounds, especially, I told you, 52% young women, but it's very much a company focused on client problems and providing client solutions. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. A few other comments. Just read the comments really quick, Radha. We are almost at 1 hour and 25 minutes into our call. Very nice call, obviously well received. So one person, Andy Grease, said, excited to hear words of wisdom from a fellow ECE mate, particularly from the first ECE batch. Ours was the first CS batch, by the way, Andy Giri. The one from Shanta.
Nice.
Good to see you all. Andy, did you like to add anything to that?
No, I'm fine. I'm just inspired by the amount of jobs she could produce in India. So that's amazing. Would like to learn more from that. More about that later.
Okay, thank you. Then there's someone, Srirajan, said that I worked under Dr. S. Mahalingam in Chennai, TCS Bush Book Allen. He sent me to HAECO HK in 1987. I don't know what that means, but I think it's a good thing.
That was
Good.
basically Hong Kong Aircraft Engineering
Yes.
Company. I was on tandem at the time, and
I
that's
see.
my entry into Hong Kong.
Into Hong Kong. Oh,
And then by 91, I had an urge to do something on my own because no, I never had any family which had a background in business. Yeah. So I started my own
great. That is
one-man
great.
business. Yeah. It took me 7 months to break my first sales. I was working from home. Morning, I used to do programming. I never had PC experience. And then afternoon, I go and knock, knock, knock. It took me like 7, 8 months. By the time of by one Diwali, I got my 2 orders on the same day. Very strange. Then it's
Excellent.
fun. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Shanta Mohan writes, beautiful ending to a great speech, Radha. I think all of us
Thank you,
agree on that.
Shanta. She's been such a good friend, and I
Yes,
value the relationship over all these years.
yeah. The next comment is from Mr. Vijayendran Ganesan. One of the best live experience heard. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next one is from Mr. Matt Krishnan. Brilliant and inspiring career and role model entrepreneur, Ms. Radha. Thanks for sharing. Matt, if you're on the call, you want to add anything? Please.
Sure. If you're able to hear me again,
Yes.
thank you very much for uh, the story about the early days of HP and how you sort of created the opportunity for yourself and for the country. So very grateful, and the fact that the legacy is there, something amazing that you have to be very proud of. So thank you for that. For
Thank you
creating
so
jobs,
much.
for creating the jobs in India and continuing to create jobs in the areas which are hard to do, and completely thinking out of the box in terms of going to tier 2 towns for AI and ML. It's quite incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate your comments.
Okay. And then Sri Rajan again writes, very impressive journey, Radha, except nothing to ask the question. The last question I have, one last question I have is, I am a mid-level IT with several years of development delivery experience and feeling a bit unfulfilled. Where do we start on our entrepreneurial journey?
Go find out what you're most passionate about and go, whatever that is. I think unfulfillment is one of the reasons for that is not doing what you're passionate about. And again, hey, take something that you're passionate about, even if it's while you're still at the job, and take a risk and go put yourself into it and see if you enjoy doing it. When you'll find that something you do that with can actually lead into your next career. So I think first look at yourself and see what really, where I use a term, what really makes you tick, and try it, even while you have your current job. So there's nothing wrong in doing that.
Yeah. So one final comment from Vijayendran Ganesh said, thank you for the amazing session. Sure the takeaway from the session is really worthy knowledge.
Thank you.
So that's all the questions I had. Some final comments before I close the session. It's been a great session, Radha. Unbelievable stories, experiences. I think all of us can benefit from that. There are also a few private queries I got in my WhatsApp saying that how can I reach Radha? I need to speak to her. I need to get mentored by her. Can I join her company and become an apprentice? Lots of people asking questions like that. So you clearly have touched a lot of chords here. So I'll talk to you and see how best to set up the thing. Maybe in the portal we can set up a session for Ask Radha, something like that, and be able to.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. We'll talk about it, Vish.
Good way to communicate. And the last thing is that people who joined the call, I hope you found it interesting today. Any feedback, please send us the feedback by WhatsApp. And please, if you find that the sessions were useful, encourage your friends, CG buddies, etc., to join this session. We would like to have more participation from more people because at the end of the day, people like Radha taking an hour and a half of her time is very precious. We want to take the best use of it and not and not take that advantage. So please tell your fellow students, fellow alumni, fellow friends, buddies, etc., to register in the portal and join the call in the next few weeks. Our next call is going to be in the next couple of weeks. I have a speaker already identified, and I'll let you know, guys, through the portal very soon. Thank you so much. Good night. Good morning, Radha, and good night.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.